I grew up in Arizona, which for those of you who don't know much about Arizona, it's in the Colorado River Basin in the southwestern United States. I grew up in the desert. I come from a farming and a ranching family. So I grew up in a community, every blessing that my family ever said over the food prayed for rain. So I lived my whole life thinking and worrying and talking about water and irrigation. But it wasn't until I moved and lived in the Dominican Republic for 2 years that I really saw the value of water, which is strange that a kid from the desert didn't appreciate water until he went to a tropical island. When I was living in the Dominican Republic as a missionary, a Category 5 hurricane hit the island. And it was devastating, as you can imagine. There were a lot of deaths in the neighborhood that I was living in. There was a mudslide that destroyed most of the neighborhood. And most of my time after the hurricane was over was spent in rescue efforts for the next several days and then rebuilding efforts for several months. And it was really a life-changing moment in a lot of ways for me, but especially when it came to water, because as you can imagine, in the wake of a hurricane, there were just an enormous number of challenges with housing, challenges with food, challenges with security. But everything seemed easier to deal with if I could just get my hands on a clean cup of water and if we could get rid of all of the dirty water. And it wasn't that hard to rebuild a home. It wasn't that hard to move food from one location to another. It wasn't that hard to teach or to train. But if you could just get the dirty water out of the way, the flood water, and if we could just get everyone clean water, everything else seemed more manageable. And that, I think, was really the beginning of a passion for the idea that if I could just start with something. And I think for a lot of us, when we look at the problems in the world, that's the hardest question to answer. It's where do we begin? And my book is at least an attempt to argue that the beginning should be water. That if you're looking for some place to start making a difference, the place to start is water security for everyone in the world. If we could give that gift to everyone, the miracle of enough clean water and safety from the dangers of water, then a lot of other problems that you might think have nothing to do with water, they might maybe not be solved, but at least be surprisingly advanced. And just going to Claudia's point about a global pandemic, I remember being in the wake of that hurricane. We would have a mass outbreaks of conjunctivitis in our neighborhood, so pink eye. And there was not enough water for good hygiene. People couldn't wash their hands. The water was contaminated, so you'd watch conjunctivitis just spread through the entire community. And so there was, unsurprisingly, lots in the Dominican Republic, a lot of citrus fruit floating around in the floodwaters. So I would take lemons and oranges and cut them open and squeeze them into my eyes to try and keep my eyes clean so that I wouldn't get conjunctivitis. And it's just another example of what a difference having a little bit of water can make just to wash your hands. And I know that feeling of having to look at your water supply in your home and know you're going to make a choice between washing your hands or having enough to drink. And that's just not a choice I want anyone in the world to ever have to make.